I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Niles Main District Library Special Budget Meeting for June 24th, 2024 at 7:02 p.m.
Trustee Kadir is given notice. He'll be a few minutes late. Trustee Derblick.
Present.
Trustee Schoenfeld.
Here.
Treasurer Vitello.
Present.
Secretary Rosensky.
Here.
Vice President Trunco.
Here.
President Key.
Here. Please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, first for public comment is Elliot Osherman.
Good evening, Board. This is Elliot Osherman. As usual, I've given a copy of these comments to your Executive Director so you can follow along. As usual, I address all these comments to you as the entirety of the Board. And as usual, my 9 declarative statements about neither being silenced nor interrupted, nor will we, nor will the community. I will remember the Board's actions, and by whom is appropriate, as will we, as will the community, and I will vote at the next election on April 1st, 2025, or early if possible, a mere 8 months and 7 days away, as will we, as will the community. I approach this Board hearing about the proposed budget with 3 considerations. The first is that it should provide enough of a cushion for provisions for increased security, both from the standpoint of personnel requirements and operational considerations, and also that it should provide for the next step in establishing the library's strategic plan. The second consideration is called the law of unintended consequences. This is when unanticipated results occur as the result of an action. For example, when the so-called temporary hiring freeze was instituted, it overlapped for a summer in which the U.S. Passport Office was overwhelmed, and there were constant weeks of delays of 13 to 17 weeks in which the Passport Office was running behind. When asked why the library could not generate even more revenue for being a passport generator, we were told there was not enough staff qualified to handle a larger amount of the overflow. This was a missed opportunity to generate more revenue for the library. One way to avoid this law is to look at the fiscal year budget as affecting more than just the next 12 months of income and expenses, also known as looking long-term. This is also known as consideration number 3. The third consideration is don't mistake the forest for the trees. Keep a view for the longer term as well. Thank you and good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have one additional comment that was submitted in writing. To the Board of the Niles Main District Library from Carol Young, Village of Niles taxpayer. First of all, a note of gratitude. Thank you, Niles Main District Library, for your wonderful collection of items available for checkout and the many programs offered, which entertain and bring knowledge to so many. A library doesn't operate by itself. Thank you to each and every employee and volunteer. The books, DVDs, and numerous other items that I would like to use or borrow from the Niles Main District Library should not be determined by statistics. As a resident taxpayer, my choice for reading or viewing materials should be available to me and to all of our patrons, no matter how many people walk through the door of the library or how many items they check out. Most, if not all, libraries have evolved from the library of my days of reading Nancy Drew mysteries and now offer things we couldn't possibly have imagined. Helpful, informative, and entertaining programs bring additional sources of knowledge, and libraries have become gathering places for the whole community. You don't have to belong to a certain age group or play a sport. Just come to a library and see what they have to offer. Like many people, I do own many of my favorite books, but I couldn't actually buy all the books I have read or used for reference. Buying books from Amazon and or signing up for a movie streaming service is sometimes a luxury that many patrons cannot afford. Assuming that everyone can buy all of their books from Amazon is not only wrong, but is also demeaning to those who are unable to do so. A library is like a gift shop, but all the gifts are free. If a taxpayer is not getting their free gifts, that is their choice. Thank you, Niles Main District Library, for all the gifts.
Thank you.
Would anyone else like to make public comment? Okay.
Okay, so I think we are ready to hear from Director Marshall about the budget.
Okay. I have submitted a draft budget for your consideration. I was not given too many guidelines by the board, so I was hoping for some further input from you. And what I went off of were recommendations from the community, requests from the staff, my observations from how the building is running. And I determined that if we are trying to spend down our additional revenues that we have currently in the bank, I looked at what we were trying to spend down the previous fiscal year, and that's how I set the budget number that I started with. So I will go ahead and read through the narrative that I provided so that we can go through the different sections of the budget. My introduction says the library's budget has been prepared by myself, the executive director, in consultation with library department heads, financial projections from the library's accounting firm Sikich, and advisement by library budget consultants from Meristem Advisors. I have taken into consideration projected incomes for the library, which are conservative, past trends of expenditures and library circulation and usage, as well as needs and wants as requested by staff, the public, and the board. This narrative includes reasons for significant changes to the estimated expenses from the previous budget year in each category. This budget is intended to be a working budget and does not indicate that any proposed project, contract, or expense, if requiring board approval according to established policies, has been approved. So the first section I'm going to talk about is the estimated revenues. All revenues were estimated conservatively, so it is possible that the library will earn more income than projected, but that is not a guarantee, which is why we go conservatively. Miscellaneous remains a category because the library cannot predict every opportunity for revenue that may arise in any given fiscal year. For this fiscal year, we anticipate the possibility of revenue from vending machine sales and passport photo booth sales as part of this category. Are there any questions or comments about the revenue section? Okay. Under expenditures, the general information I shared is that the per capita expenses line item has been removed from the budget. The per capita grant does not require tracking of specific expenses related to the grant. It is more beneficial and transparent for the library, since this grant is fairly sizable, to more accurately record and report on which categories of expense these funds are used to purchase, such as databases. The first category under expenditures is salaries. There are significant changes proposed here. So according to the Personnel Standards section of Serving Our Public Library 4.0, Standards for Illinois Public Libraries, salaries alone typically account for up to 60% of the total budget. Salaries plus fringe benefits, which include FICA, which under our budget is called Social Security, pension, and health insurance account for up to 70%. The proposed salaries and fringe benefits account for 67.5% of the proposed operating budget in this draft. This budget will allow the library to reopen to pre-pandemic hours of operation as requested by many patrons. Overall salaries have increased from the previous fiscal year for the library due to the following considerations and requests. The first bullet point says the union contract was ratified in November 2023, and adjustments from this ratification were not complete until March 2024. So the 2024-2025 fiscal year is the first budget year where the library will see the impact of those increases to the library's budget. I have also budgeted to add 19 positions, which is equal to 13 full-time equivalent employees, including an assistant director, which was in the previous year's budget but was never filled. This is a vital position needed for the library according to the Matrix study. A community engagement manager, which was in the previous year's budget, called a marketing manager, so it's been retitled, but we did have that position. and a part-time marketing assistant for the community engagement, which is formerly the marketing department. My understanding is that we previously did have an additional part-time position in that department that was not budgeted for last year, but would be very helpful, especially since we are trying to grow the services of that department. Within adult services, we have requested 1 full-time and 2 part-time assistants in the outreach section to increase home deliveries and pop-up library visits in the community, including to better serve Main Township residents, which is one of the most frequent comments that I receive from patrons, that we would like to increase services in that area. We're asking for 4 part-time assistants in the digital services department to increase the open hours in the creative studio and to offer more technology classes for the public because they are our most in-demand programs. We're asking for an assistant supervisor and 2 part-time assistants for the IT and facilities department to better meet the demands of maintaining a 65,000 square foot building. These staff may also be tasked based on future union discussions with security monitor duties for the library, as was done at this library successfully in past practice. We're asking for 6 part-time associates in patron services. Currently, the department head and assistant department head are working almost all weekend days to cover shortages in that department. We also hope to decrease the amount of time between when an item is returned or added to the library collection and when it gets onto the shelf, to increase services such as passports, and to add services such as yard waste stickers and license plate sticker renewals for residents of the Village of Niles. We are asking for increased hours for a librarian and youth services, as well as 3 part-time assistants for that department. This will help expand coverage for the increased demand for school and community outreach in underserved areas and school districts within our library district. I did not include this in my narrative, but this will also help that department to better focus on the ordering of materials. They have under-ordered this fiscal year because they have not had the staff to be able to dedicate to ordering their full requested budget, because they have had more librarians on desk where we could use assistance in that place, which was also advised by the Matrix study. And we're asking for increased hours for 1 staff member in materials services. However, this department does not plan to fill a previously allotted full-time position, so this change does not have a significant impact on the budget. Does anyone have any questions or comments about this section?
Couple questions.
Sure.
So when you did the salary allocations for these 19 new positions, did you anticipate a full year salary, so like starting July 1?
We did,
Okay, so obviously we're not gonna be able to hire 19 people in the next 2 weeks.
absolutely.
So what kind of pro rata impact is that gonna have on the actual numbers? Like, you know, we don't, like, obviously, out of these 19, they're gonna be higher priority and lower priority. Like assistant director is really high priority, right? But there are some others which are like, okay, you know, after we fill these 5, then we'll try to get these other ones in. So in terms of the overall actual impact, we're obviously over budgeting because we're assuming everyone starts July 1, which is not the reality of what's gonna happen. And so, you know, is there play in terms of, like, why not just kind of say, okay, well, we're anticipating in the first 3 months, we're gonna fill these 5, and the next 3 months, you know, and that, like, have a kind of discounting factor?
Sure, that comes down to budgeting philosophy. I did talk to both the SICAJ advisor and the Meristem advisor about this. The reason why I chose to budget with full salary amounts is this helps us to anticipate what this will look like next year.
Okay, understood. Secondly, the 19 positions, so there's 6 positions when Pilar was the interim director that we specifically said, please hire these 6 positions now. And I missed the overlap. Is the ones of those 6, we haven't filled all 6 yet, is my understanding, correct?
We
actually have.
We have,
yeah.
except for the facilities position, because
Right,
that
Because
has
it's
changed.
changed.
Right,
But
okay.
the other ones
All
have.
the other ones are already,
They've
so
already
these
been
19 are in addition to
In
those,
addition.
Correct.
except for the facilities, of
Yes.
course. And the 19 also, you mentioned, includes Sasha's position, includes,
An assistant director, which was already in the budget.
yeah,
last
right, so it
year.
includes things that we've already approved. So it's not really a 19 new positions, it's more of a 19 including the stuff that we have to fill for people who left.
Yeah, well, and you gotta remember, coming on the board last year, there was an assistant director position in the
Right.
budget then. There's an assistant director budget in this fiscal
Yeah,
year.
right. No,
So for the last 2 years, we haven't even had an assistant director of a salary of, let's just call it $80,000. So there's been $160,000 savings just on that alone.
Right, understand.
To speak to also to what Valerie was saying, when, like, for instance, for my company, I budget for a year of how many people I'm gonna have working full-time,
Yeah.
lower that like that. So that's how most places do it, and then,
Okay.
yes, you come on the budget, or what happens is, you may come up with a position that's not a part-time position, or a lower tiered paying position, that later on you
Okay.
have to, replace somebody higher, and then that budget helps cover that
I have
difference.
no employees, so I don't, this is not my forte.
No problem. Yeah, no, it's definitely something that's normal practice.
I just have a couple of comments.
Mhm.
So regarding staffing, I know you commented about ILA and the percentage. I think it's benefits and salaries are 70% of the library's budget. I just want to remind everyone that benefits include a lot more than FICA and IMRF. I calculated the budget for staffing to be $5.7 million, which is 72% of the budget.
Carolyn, what else did you add?
And
Would you mind clarifying? just
all
what
the
else?
other items that pertain to the benefits that we give staff, there's many.
Okay,
The
So they're
definition-
in the budget. If you read the budget line items not line items, but categories that she listed, you'll see. So if I could just finish. Okay, and what I'm trying to say is, although ILA's 4.0, that particular booklet, states that 70% is the amount for staffing, we need to realize that we're spending $5.7 million on staffing in order to provide less than $2 million in services to the taxpayers. So I can't see how that's a logical decision, but I just wanted to point that out.
Point of
But then
information.
you're all
I'd like to
talking-
please have your,
And you're all talking about positions that we're filling.
I would like to have your documentation on how you calculated that, please.
Okay, I'll tell you what, I'll read all the line items.
No, I
to
would
you.
like you to send it in an email, please.
Okay, I don't have anything to send you. Read
Then
the budget.
then what you have
After
is
the
not
meeting, then.
what you're presenting to us. If you cannot back it
Can-
up,
can you
is
Are you
provide an email?
unaware of the costs that we
I'm not
incur for
asking you
staff?
for more
None of
to
you,
discuss
none of
what
you
you're
are
talking
aware
about.
of the
I'm
costs?
asking you to provide documentation for what you're presenting.
I'll tell you what, my question to you, because I'm almost baffled. Could some of you help me with this question that seems to be alarming?
So-
None of you can think of the costs in the budget that go to staffing?
I don't think I think you're kind of.
No,
not-
I'm asking you,
hold
because
on,
you know,
hold on.
I'm afraid you don't know. I really am worried
No,
about
what
how
I'm-
much knowledge is
So-
around this board.
So what President Keene is asking you is,
Take the time to give her all the answers. I totally know what she's asking.
then I don't see,
No,
if
but if
you've
you're
already
gonna
come up
present
with it.
something to the
But I'm
public,
asking you as
Trustee Durblick, if you're gonna present something in public, you need to be able to furnish your proof
Okay,
for
I'll
it,
be honest
okay?
with you, half the public knows exactly what the numbers are, but I will provide them for
Thank
this
you.
board, okay?
That's all.
And
That's all
then
we're asking.
furthermore, you're all talking about whatever 16 positions you're concerned about filling, or the 6 that have already been filled. And yet, this new board, and especially you, Trustee Kadir, brought on specifically for the purpose of eliminating the hiring freeze, and yet there's been no analysis or reevaluation of staff to understand the
not true.
value of our current
That is
staff,
not true.
to figure out what we can do. And if there was a
And the resolution that
reevaluation.
we gave you last week is clearly not
And if-
making any impact because you are doing exactly the
Okay,
same
no,
things.
so my question is, what, again, all of you have discussions outside of the
That's
board.
not
I'm
true
not.
either.
You
That is
just
an
said,
accusation.
you just
You're making
mentioned,
false
That's
accusations.
you
false
just mentioned there
accusations.
was a reevaluation
Of
already
the
done.
matrix study, yes.
Oh, that's not a reevaluation of staffing
Well, that's your
positions.
opinion.
The matrix study didn't even address our staff and what
Yes,
they're
it did.
doing, totally
Okay,
eliminated
that's
it.
your, can we move on, please? You're you're
So
derailing
just
the
to
meeting
clarify,
again. This is what
just
you
to
do every
clarify,
time.
you were stating that the matrix study, which never reevaluated any of our departments by staff, did do an evaluation and I missed it.
Keep going. What else you got?
Interesting. Trustee Kadir, are you familiar with where that is in the?
Keep going,
matrix
please, move
study?
along, we're
I
not here
just-
to,
I'll
Do
defer to
that.
President
We're
Keen if we're
listening
not,
to
if
you
we're not
right
going
now,
through.
Carol.
we're not going down that rabbit hole.
Well, no,
We have
I'm
another
just
question
asking,
about the
well,
budget.
you just denounced my statement and I don't have the
You are out of
evaluation.
order. If you have questions for the director about the budget, continue. Otherwise, we're not going down another rabbit hole.
I was responding to you, President Keen. I didn't think gaveling me while I'm responding to you was appropriate. Right, then I'll mention a couple of other things. So, first of all, can you explain what we're doing here? You're gonna read every paragraph and then we're gonna jump in with questions.
Yes.
And then will you also be going through the budget, line by line?
No.
You're not going through the budget line by line. We're just
No.
talking about this written summary.
This is the budget.
Trustee Derblick, I'll give you
Okay,
a.
no problem.
You asked me a question, I'll give you a very brief answer.
No, that's okay. I don't want to put you on the corner. I'm sorry. You could defer to the president. I get it. I don't want to put you on the spot. So as far as the positions go, my concern is that I was not given any reevaluation of staff that took place to justify where we were with the number of staff we had. Again, because of the number of hours, of staffing hours that we have, I never understood why we could not utilize our staff where they were needed. So if somebody has that study, please share it with me.
It was
So-
done in the
so my- hold
matrix
on,
study
hold
and
on.
it's
I'll
done
let
by
you-
the director,
Let me
okay?
make
It can,
I'm sorry.
Oh, we never
the matrix
received
study
anything.
did look at staffing and recommended that we increase our staffing levels.
No,
The
they
department heads have
They
also
didn't.
done the same.
didn't. The
Okay, well,
matrix
maybe you need to
study
go back and read it
stated,
again.
staff requested this,
Requested.
staff
Okay,
requested
and also the
that.
director and the department heads are putting their input into what we need, and that's how
So
it's
then,
figured out.
should I ask Director Marshall for the reevaluation of staff as far as the need for eliminating the hiring freeze?
No, that would be going.
No, we
past
all
our
agreed
numbers.
on, not all of us, but
No, I'm looking
enough
for
of us
the
agreed for that.
justification. You're saying.
The
it's-
justification has already been given, you just don't wanna look at it.
So,
Director-
so-
Trustee Kadir,
okay.
please send me this justification, if you
Okay,
don't
so,
mind.
so my answer to your inquiry is very simple. Director Marshall has 100% authority given by this board over personnel decisions. Director Marshall talks to the department heads, presents to the board, talks to a whole bunch of people, and figures out, this is where we have needs.
Right.
And I defer to that decision.
Right.
That's
And
my answer.
So I understand we have a conversation, so there is no written study. If there is, would you please email it to me?
The written study, the matrix study gave a general outline saying that this, staffing needs to be increased, et cetera, et cetera. It is then the director's prerogative to determine, okay, these are the specific areas in which there are shortages by talking. I'm not a librarian, neither are you, neither is anyone on this board except for
But
President
you
Keen.
would still need numbers to justify what you need. But where are they?
They're in every month's reports.
Could you,
And the numbers do not increase. So you have 3 people on one little,
Okay, well, we just,
Okay,
we're
so
not gonna
the
agree on
director,
this
the
topic,
director
so.
just clarified exactly why she's asking for the position she's asking for. She said, we need 4 people in this to do this,
Mm-hmm.
because we're not doing X, Y, Z. I mean, it's right here, it's on
no,
page.
she's saying we need it. I'm asking to see the data that justifies in that department where the shortcoming occurs. It's usually how you, the way you
Okay,
provide
that's,
staff is you analyze the
as I've
department.
mentioned to you many times
So if you could
before,
just do me a
there's a
favor.
difference, we have a difference in philosophy as
Absolutely.
to how.
Yes,
and
data
so-
and analysis,
And so
I
there's
get it.
not a, there's
That's
no
fine,
reason
and
to
we
have
can-
this discussion further.
Okay,
I
Trustee
agree to
Kadir, if
disagree
you
with you.
could please send me where in the matrix study,
I
or tell
don't
me
have
what
that
they-
information, I'm telling you that, I don't have that information. I'm telling you I have a difference in understanding as to my
Well,
need
just
for
tell
that
me in the
information.
matrix study where it is. I will read.
I'm not saying it's in the matrix study, that's my point, I'm not saying it's in the matrix study.
Trustee
I'm
said
saying
that.
it's
Oh, then
in,
would you please
You
send
have
me
the
the,
it's in,
Send me
it's
the
in our
page.
director's head, and
Pardon
that's
me?
good enough for me.
You have the same
I
information
don't
that I have.
identify it as you
Well,
do.
that's that's,
Trustee
So,
Durwood,
I can't
Trustee
help
that.
Durwood,
With me.
what I am saying is,
Yes, sir.
it is, right now, it is all contained in that brain that's sitting in that head right over there. And that's good enough for me, that's what I'm telling you.
Okay, so there's no need for justifying our staffing.
Derek?
That's fine.
That's what I'm
Marshall.
saying.
That, I got it.
Director
Okay.
Marshall?
thank you
I-
for waiting, that was very patient. of you.
Thank you. Director Marshall, I do have a question. I'll piggyback on this. So you gave us a justification for the increased staff, but you said something that maybe other trustees missed, which is we are planning to increase our hours back to pre-pandemic hours, to increase the library hours. So we would need, we're already having, like we've talked about tonight, material services is having a hard time keeping up alone.
Yes.
So now if we're gonna increase our hours, we're going to need additional staff to make this library exactly where it should be again.
Every department has reported having challenges with getting materials onto the shelves, doing enough programs to increase our numbers, doing outreach to the areas of the community that are underserved, going to all of the schools that we serve in our community, running the programs, ordering the books. I see it myself every single day that I'm here. I see the challenges that they face. I understand that I've heard people say that staff just stand around. That is not true. The only time staff are not actively working on something other than being at a public service desk is so that they are at public service desk for the patrons who come in. We need more staff to do more community service. We do not currently have a strategic plan to give us areas to focus on. So my job in putting together this proposal was to put together what I think we need to focus on based on discussions with our staff and with our community. I've met with our community several times. I get emails constantly, I get phone calls constantly, I talk to people. This is what they want. This is why I focused on these areas. And just to comment on your definition of fringe benefits, Trustee Derblick, is not the definition that is in Serving Our Public 4.0 standards for Illinois Public Libraries. I directly quoted that source material. Fringe benefits is defined as FICA, pension, and health insurance. I understand you are also trying to include the professional development budget.
Whatever it costs for us to, when we hire our employees, we offer them all these benefits. That is a cost associated with staffing. So I'm just putting it together to have a more realistic number.
Can I please continue? I waited long enough.
I think she's not
Yeah,
finished.
please, well, you jumped in.
Just my one response to professional development, that is not a benefit in the same way that FICA and insurance and pension are, because that helps our institution. Every time an employee goes to training, they bring something back to our institution. And so that's a benefit for our community, and our staff is our biggest resource to the community. You were mentioning only $2 million to services to the community. Our biggest resource to the community is our staff. They provide our programs, they keep our building open, they provide information, they keep everything running, they keep the building in good condition. Our staff is our biggest resource. So please don't discount them as a resource.
I'm not discounting
Director
them as a
Marshall,
resource.
opportunity.
I'm just stating that we need to realize the cost
Right.
associated with staff. And
Of
as
course.
far
I'll
as
be more
programs
professional,
go and the increase in programs from previous years based on this increased budget and an increase in patron attendance, the numbers aren't showing. We have peaks and valleys, but we can never maintain it. And I'm sure summer is a very busy time in the library, just as any other holiday when our students are out of school. We need to start increasing programming through the whole year, or services through the whole year, and increase the patron attendance, and we're not doing that.
That's because
So
we don't
yes,
have
we
enough
talk
staff to
about-
do it.
Okay,
We do
and
need
the
to
other
increase
thing
staff
is,
for that.
I don't want to belabor this point, but yes, I'm not discounting staff. I'm saying part of the reevaluation of staff was to reevaluate the processes and methods. Because when I went department to department, there was much to be redone to provide more ways to accomplish much more by even utilizing different staff whose interests would increase productivity, because that's what they would prefer. We've never taken the
Okay.
time, to my knowledge, to
Are we
do
done?
that. So that's what I meant.
Okay,
Thank you.
But I never would be discounting
Enough.
them.
okay.
Director Marshall, I want to ask you just a couple of quick questions, so that way I understand and the public gathers as well. Your background coming in here, you've ran other libraries, and you've been a
Yes.
librarian, you understand what the library needs to be functional?
Yes.
Okay, so besides President King, who's also has a master's of library and works as a librarian, you're the only two people in this room that fully understand what it takes to run a library. So what you're coming up with, and the fact that you went to each department head and you've worked with each department head diligently to get this budget where it is today, I am more than comfortable with your suggestions and your opinions. I I will say it now, I will continue to go through it, but do I think the number for my taste is a little bit high than where it should be? Absolutely. Do I think there's drastic cuts that need to be made? Absolutely not. I think what you've done is fantastic. I think what the staff has done is fantastic. I think what the staff has done over the last 3 years has been amazing, that they've been able to do what they've been able to do to keep this library for our public going. I appreciate that. The other question I do have for you is, with the staffing levels, with the increase.
Yes.
We just talked about, Trustee Kadir brought up the fact that this isn't going to be everybody's hired on July 1st. Some of these positions may not get hired for 6 or 9 months from now. So we're not hiring 19 people day one. We do have certain positions of the AD, which has been neglected since Cindy was, promoted into executive director. There was never an assistant director for 3 years. So for 3 years, we've saved over $240,000 as a library for something that's been budgeted. Sasha's position needs to drastically be refilled, and it has needed to be refilled. And now we just lost another member of the team in there. So if we want the programming and everything to get out to the people, we need to be able to do these things. So, while we're sitting here talking about 16, 19, 17, it doesn't matter what positions we're talking about. At the end of the day, we're talking about not all of them are going to be filled at one time. There's going to be an instant savings just based off of 6 months of a lag on some of these positions or longer. This is what we need. If this is what you and the staff has come up with, what we need for where we are today, not where we were pre-pandemic, not where we are in 3 years, but where we are today and how we're going to improve and get better, then I thank you and I thank the staff for all the diligent work that they've done.
Thank you. As far as your comment related to the number being a little bit high for your taste, I welcome the direction of the board. If you give me a number to work within, we can make it work, and that's why we're having this
Absolutely.
first meeting.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. I wanted to throw that out there. I'd love to hear the rest of this and go through the rest of it.
I have a
My
question
one point
also.
on the number issue is, that's where our job comes in. Your job is to figure out what to do with it. Our job is to figure out what the number should be.
Well, and that's really it too. Like,
Yeah.
Trustee Kadir, you just hit it on the head, right? Like, we should be giving you a number, which hopefully we can agree to tonight. And that number is your budget. You get a budget, just like people do it in every aspect of their lives, including their personal lives, of this is your budget you have to spend within it. You can't spend over it. Make it work for what you need it to work for. And that's the difference between governance and running the library day to day. We're governance to give you that number. You're in charge of running the day-to-day to make that number work. And that's what I want to see happen this year. That's something I've been excited about since your interview and bringing you on, of all the great ideas you've had. So that's something I definitely want to see going forward, in this first year.
Wholeheartedly second that.
Thank you.
I do have a question about the reopening of the previous hours. Is that gonna be timed dependent on the positions, as we fill positions?
It would have to be time depending upon, I don't anticipate we would need to fill all of these positions before reopening, but I would need to have that conversation with my department heads
Okay.
to see where they're comfortable with staffing levels, and we would have to prepare those schedules at least a month in advance because of the union parameters and requirements. So I'll have that
So
discussion
that wouldn't
with
be
the board.
happening right away?
No.
Not right
It would
away,
be
no.
down
The
the road.
earliest would probably be the fall, right?
I can't anticipate, it depends on hiring processes.
Okay, and then I just have maybe a suggestion. I know that I appreciate you reading this to us, but I'm gonna go ahead and assume that we've all read it before tonight, and so maybe, unless everyone feels like we need to keep reading through it, maybe we can kind of just jump to the number part.
That's fine with me.
Are you guys okay with
Well,
that?
Well, I would
I'm
like
totally
to
fine
go
with
over.
that.
Okay, I just need one clarification. A couple of you have mentioned the concern about when we're hiring new people. I guess I'm not sharing that concern. We're hiring 16 people, whatever it costs, it's in the budget. I don't see why
I'm
it
just
matters
saying
So
to you.
if you hire 16 people on July 1st, this is what it's going to cost you. But if you hire 4 of them by August 1st, you hire another 3 by October 1st, it's not going to cost you that full amount.
I thought these 16 positions are for the new budget years, and that's what we're reading?
They are, but if you're gonna give
Right.
somebody, let's say, $80,000 for the year, and the year starts on July 1st, and you don't hire them until January, you're now at $40,000. So you're saving $40,000 on that line item because that person wasn't in place.
Well,
So-
that's true.
It's factual.
I
So
said
that's-
it's
okay,
true.
So that's one of those things that's gonna, save a lot of the budget money right there, and that's where some of the,
Play.
for my liking, the flexibility, the play, the feasibility of it to save some money and maybe pull back a little bit, which we'll get to that number at some point. That's where my thought process goes.
Well, I just want to make sure if there's a need for the position, that the person will be hired, but if we can wait till January, that I question the need to have that position filled
It's
at
not that
all.
we can wait, it's because
So
you,
I'm just saying, when I look at it in those terms, it's something to then rethink the process.
Well, it's
Well,
very
it's
hard
not
to
that
bring
we
16
can wait till
people
January,
on.
so that you can't bring 16 people on at
Yeah.
once, and
It's
so-
more capacity for Cassandra, because to hire,
Mhm.
she has to be in every interview process. She has to reach out to all of the candidates. We have to collect applications. It takes time.
Yeah.
So it's not that we don't have the need for all of these positions. We don't have the bandwidth to hire them all immediately.
unless we had a
So
library
we're
phone
hiring in order of priority, but with the staffing levels we have to do the hiring, we have to do it as a process.
Can you share an example?
What is
for
the
for-
number of staff we have? I keep
We have
hearing.
78 right
You
now,
have 78 staff, you do have 78.
right now.
Thank you.
Can you share an example? We have the community engagement
Yes,
manager
please.
up right now. Now, I believe that was put up about what? 3
About a
weeks
month ago.
About a month
Yeah.
ago? And we're just now being able to start the interview process coming up shortly?
Yeah.
And that's not because of lack of anybody who's doing anything, it's just the
Well, you
fact
have to
of.
give time for candidates
Correct,
to apply.
exactly. You have to post a position, you have to post it everywhere, you have to go ahead and go through the candidates. Some positions you're gonna wanna do a phone screen, then you're gonna bring them in for the interview. So this has been a lot of hard work for one position, that's a very important position, but it's one position, and it's taking a month. So if this is one position, I can only imagine that if we put 3 or 4 up, it's probably gonna take at least 2 to 3 months to get everybody hired.
It
and
takes
get-
time, yeah.
At least 2 to 3 months probably, yeah. So I mean, look, we've had those 6 positions approved, those 5 that we approved, it took probably close to, 6, 7 months to get done?
Just about, yeah, and some of them we did post a couple at a time,
Yeah,
so it's a process.
yeah.
Just
So
like anything else, yeah.
it's not gonna happen all in one day, so.
Oh, you're gonna have fun.
Oh, this is my wheelhouse, so I'm ready for it.
So the other recommendation would be just add a cloning lab to Makerspace. Make it
Thank you
more-
so much, that's perfect.
We'll take care of it,
We're done, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you imagine 2 of them?
I'm just.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why do we have to sell yard waste stickers and license plate stickers when the village actually can sell those?
We don't have to sell them. It's an additional service that the public asks us for because we're open on weekends when the village is not
Village is
open.
not.
Not only
And
that,
evenings.
You go to
It's
Jewel.
income. But yeah,
And-
there's.
Well,
I know,
that
but
there's
is
the
No,
library, and
it's
it's the way the library is moving forward in the world. Libraries are not just books anymore, libraries are all kinds of
We don't want to
things.
stress our staff with more tasks.
This was a request from that department.
Mhm.
They want to add this service. They don't feel like it's an additional stress. They think it's
Oh,
an
good.
additional service.
Right. Before we jump to that budget, I do have a question going down to building and equipment maintenance.
Sure.
Um,
I'm gonna ask Rich to join us at the table. Actually, he can answer those questions. Do you
There
mind, Rich?
are,
Thank you.
there is a list of several, I guess it's called building and equipment maintenance, I guess, tasks. And, I noticed it's actually a combination of outside vendors, some of it is done by our staff. So I'm trying to understand what the point is here. There are annual inspections, I don't understand how it's affecting us, or what your point is here.
The level of detail included was to show and justify why we needed the budget. We didn't include specific dollar amounts, but it shows how much work goes into that particular section of the budget, because it's a larger section of the budget.
Oh, so like the annual, so you're just listing what's usually in the budget? Okay,
And some things that are just for this year as well.
right, exactly. And then the other thing that caught my eye was, you did list the names of the tasks, but there's no specification, like you said, about the cost, or even if it's something we're performing with staff, or I know we've had a switch in staff and maintenance, if we're unable to no longer provide some of these tasks Are they being outsourced? So there's another dollar, there's another cost associated with that. I don't see I don't see the value in just listing 25, 50 items without any cost. So for us to understand where we're headed going forward.
Carolyn, can I make a suggestion about this?
But wait, no, let me just finish my
I
statement.
think it'll address your point.
But just a minute,
Okay.
but did I read somewhere in your, in this write-up that the board is no longer authorizing the costs? So there are no costs associated with all of these items, and they'll be authorized later by the board?
So, I read this at the beginning, this budget is intended to be a working budget and does not indicate that any proposed project, contract, or expense, if requiring additional board approval according to established policies, has been approved. So I know you've mentioned in a previous meeting that you said all contracts are supposed to be approved during the budgeting process. That is not common practice because contracts come up at different times of the year. The budget is an estimate based on the previous year or for any new projects, any estimates that we've sought out before the budget. It's a working budget, so we are not guaranteeing that, for example, the landscape contract is gonna cost exactly what it's going to cost. in the
Because we
budget.
don't get quotes to prepare the budget.
Exactly.
So back to my point then, we're approving a budget tonight and we have no
No.
justification.
No, we're not. We're-
Well, we will in a couple of weeks.
Okay,
The purpose of this document
Mhm.
is to approve it.
Mhm.
But yet, we have not gathered, we have not been able to, we do not have any quotes or anything to represent the actual costs. So you're taking that away from the board's approval in the budget, then when does that occur?
It occurs if anything is over $5,000 when we bring it to a board meeting for board approval.
But I believe according to the parliamentarian, the budget is approved by the board in its entirety.
This is the entire
And
budget.
then, but there are no costs associated with
It's
any
not
of
But
the.
the
line by
breakdown,
line.
yeah.
Excuse me, there are no costs associated with, there isn't even an itemized breakdown of categories in this budget sheet of yours. So what I'm saying is, if there aren't any costs associated with it, there can't be any discussion about other options, which is this board's decision.
That's not true. The line items are my decision.
No, the
Yes.
budget,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
budget,
Yeah.
the budget
Yes.
is, you create a budget.
She did.
And this
Yes.
board approves it
Yes.
after we've reviewed it to
Yes.
understand it.
Yes.
what
But
this
we're
is.
unable to,
No,
this is not an entire
yes,
budget.
yes it is.
Okay, these are categories.
That's your
Yes.
opinion.
Under each, it's not an opinion,
It
it's a
is.
fact.
It is, and
Under
my
each
opinion is different, and
category-
so is most of us in here.
This is the budget
Okay,
that
can
goes
I just
into
finish my
the,
statement? since
No,
you
I think your
interrupted?
point is made.
Each line
This is the
item
budget that is being
has-
presented to us. We are not gonna get a budget like you've had in the past. This is how we are doing it.
That's fine, I'm not asking you to give me a detailed budget that outlines
But that's what you're
costs.
asking.
No,
That is exactly what you're
I'm stating, or I'm trying to state, that we are not approving the budget with a breakdown of actually what it
That's
stands
correct.
for.
That-
You're just approving a total amount, and we have no idea what anything
That's-
costs.
Well,
Not-
we do
not
have
that
an
we don't
idea.
no
We have a
but
very
we
good
don't
idea.
have- We don't have a breakdown of every line item. That is correct. We don't.
So we have a
not
breakdown of
asking for it.
categories, I know you're
Yes.
not, and I think that's your choice. But what I'm saying is, we're approving categories, and we're not even certain what's under those categories.
No,
Just like
we are certain what's
Rich is-
under, we're
You
just
are,
not
I don't
certain.
know, I don't know what's under
Okay,
these
so what's on the
categories.
list? Is
No,
what's
no.
under the category.
These are category, each one of these has
Yeah,
multiple
so
items.
what's on Rich's long list of whatever, 70, 50 items or whatever,
Yes,
is
yes.
what's in the category. Now, what we are not approving is how much is being allocated for each category, and that is based on the director's explanation that typically
Right.
we have some play.
So-
That, okay, this one goes down by 2K, this one goes up by 2K, et cetera.
So what I'm saying is, I have a budget, and I
Yeah.
have a written document that lists all the items that
That
belong
fall
somewhere
under-
in this
Well,
budget.
they don't fall somewhere
And
under,
what-
they fall under the
Building and grounds.
specific,
Building and-
building and grounds.
Well, here, the categories vary because it's either an outside vendor, it's a consultant, or it's
But
staff.
all of it falls under building and
Or
grounds.
it's staff work. No, it falls under salaries, or it falls.
No, it
under-
doesn't, not in building and grounds, not everything in this list falls under salary, everything in this list falls under
That's why
building and
it's
grounds.
listed in building and grounds,
That's why it's
because
listed
it
in
falls
building
under
and
building and grounds.
Garden club flowers and pots.
They're
What
paid
vendor
for
is
by
that
the
from?
library.
That's not
That
what we're
falls
talking about
under-
It's under
tonight.
repairs
That's
and
not what we're here to
improvements.
talk about
It's under
tonight.
the $78,000.
Well, that's a good point. Now, so he has the working document, but we can't, I'm just trying to make a point. None of these items are associated with
Correct.
costs. So we can't even look at them to determine that there's a better way to even go
When
about
they
this.
go
No,
over
because that's
5K,
their
we'll get
decision.
it.
Because that's not the way we're doing the budget. So I'm getting a shell of a budget, and I will approve it after whenever you decide you want to approve it. But again, there's no cost or analysis whatsoever bringing in this year's,
There is no detailed analysis, you're correct about that.
Can
There's
I-
no
so
de-
that's
further
fine.
detailed
I
analysis.
just was wondering where we were headed here.
Can
Because
I
she was
please-
reading it, I thought it would be more
Can I
elaborate.
please
That's
make a
fine.
statement? If you listened to our director, she said whatever amount we give her, she will work within the parameters.
I know, but see,
So-
a budget's not just pull a number out of the sky.
No, and that's why she did all the work that she has done to put
And
into
I would
this.
love her to share that data with us, because as a board, and you just had a training session, I
Right.
would think we would all be interested.
Well,
And
it
the
would be
training
nice
session
if we were all on the
specifically
same
told us that we
page, but
should
that's not,
That we should not be looking to
Right.
micromanage that data.
So
That's what we should have
happens
learned.
to the board's authority to oversee the
This
expenses?
is what oversight is.
Means not actually knowing the numbers, okay?
No.
it means
means
having the
knowing
trust and
overall
confidence in the
numbers
person
and-
you hired to do their
Exactly.
job and the authority that you are giving them.
Okay, but
President-
actually, the
President King,
documents
excuse
by
me.
other libraries that I've talked to do get these analysis,
Well,
that data breakdowns.
President Keane, there
Yes.
have been multiple comments made of inaccuracies tonight. Can we please get back to the budget? Because at this point, we've had accusations made of hiding things and things of that nature, and we're getting right back to what we tried to accomplish last time. We're not working, right now, the cohesive board is not being done because we can't continue to
I know.
have people getting attacked, and I'm not gonna sit here and let our executive director get attacked and the budget process get attacked that we went through a training and paid thousands of dollars to do, and we were all here. So if people can't understand that at this point, then I really think they should go back and watch videos and really take some
I
classes.
think we need to move on.
Okay,
Yeah.
and, Director Marshall, I am not attacking you. I had no idea what this board's outcome or your outcome was for a budget. That's why I sent you an email requesting that information. Had I known what the decision was, I wouldn't have asked for it. And so I am not attacking you. Again, I am not part of the board conversations that occur outside of board meetings.
Okay.
President King,
Out of order, trustee Durblick, you are out of order.
I have no clue
President-
whatsoever
Can I
what
speak?
you're talking about,
Thank you.
Carolyn.
Thank you.
Trustee Rosansky, listen, there are no outside conversations. We all got the same information on Friday via email with this document, also stating that Director Marshall would not be back in the office until this afternoon. So if you emailed her during that time, I don't know why you
No, I
did that.
emailed her before that.
Well,
and
then
that
you
was
know
the
that she was
report
out of the
I got.
office on
Report you
Friday
got
and the
these,
weekend, so
yeah.
how was she gonna respond to you?
Exactly.
We all got the same information at the same time. There have been no side conversations as we keep accusing us of. So,
Okay,
thank
it
you.
says in her
And then we are
email
going to
here-
start moving on. We are moving
No,
on
it
with the
just-
budget.
It says
No.
in her email, majority of.
Trustee Durblick, we're moving on with the
Excuse me,
budget. Nope,
You're
nope,
saying that the
We're done.
statement doesn't exist.
we're moving on in the
does.
budget. We're moving on.
I will be happy to clarify that because I imagine that these emails may be FOIA'd. Trustees are legally allowed to individually speak to me. They are not having individual conversations that I am aware of amongst themselves. You are also welcome to give me a call at any time. But according to our lawyer, individual trustees have spoken to me as the director. I'm not a trustee. So that's the difference. It's not a violation of OMA or anything for anyone to reach
I'm
out
not
to
saying
me.
it's a
I know,
violation.
I'm just clarifying for the public.
Okay, what I'm trying to get out is the majority of individual board members have said they welcome us transitioning. I didn't even know it was on the table. So apparently the other trustees knew.
What-
That's all I'm trying to say.
It was in
Had
the-
I been
it
aware
was
of
in the
it,
email.
I could have had a
Yeah.
discussion with you.
Okay, it is 7:51
No,
and we
it's-
haven't even gotten to the numbers. So let's try
I
to
know
stay on
it's hard
topic.
for me to talk when you keep interrupting. I apologize.
Well, it's hard for us to do anything if you keep talking.
Oh, at least I got to laugh tonight.
So, The reason that I came up with the number that I did for the overall budget is our revenues are estimated conservatively at 9.348 million for the next fiscal year. And I saw that this fiscal year, we were trying out of the special reserves to spend probably 1.2 million if I remember correctly. So I was trying to budget to spend a little over $1 million. That's why under net surplus and deficit for the entire budget, we are scheduled with this overall number of 10.377 million to spend about $1 million out of the reserves. Because my understanding from individual conversations, and given that we don't have a strategic plan or have not had this conversation at the board table, I was just making an estimate based on what we were trying to do last year as far as spending down reserves. But if you have a different number you'd like me to state within, I do want to advise that any number that is lower than the 10.3 means that we're likely to spend less out of reserves than this indicates, but again, I'm happy to work within
I
whatever budget.
understand you're spending out of special reserve for things that are special reserve qualified. However, we're talking at the last meeting, our long-range goal.
Mhm.
That is stuff, if we want to have any improvements to the library, that's also where money that comes out of special reserve. So the idea of spending down special reserves too much could pose problems for the future.
So one of the things we are planning to do in the next fiscal year, and I put it under the consultants line of the budget, is to hire someone to, consultants is for strategic plan. And then under special reserves, under Rich's budget, I believe it's special reserves, we're going to be hiring someone to do the capital improvements plan as well that we've talked about.
Yeah.
And that will give us a better idea moving forward of what we can do in a more long-range term. We just don't have those planning tools at the moment.
So with that being, I'm sorry, were you done, trustee?
No,
Okay,
I was
go
gonna
ahead.
just make the statement that if people are concerned about going for referendums, the reason we have special reserves that we can use on things for the future is so we don't have to go to referendum. So we don't have to bring it before the voters.
Yes.
So we have the money. And that's always been my view of what special reserves is.
So,
Sorry, go.
thank you.
Go.
So the other, I think you hit it on the head, right? Like if we bring this number back, we're gonna spend less, but we do have the capital improvement plan, we do have a strategic plan that needs to be put in place, and that will most likely require more money as we get down the road.
Yes.
The other thing about when we talk about this is we did just recapture some funds through the tax levy. So we're a little higher this year than most likely, we're a little higher this year than we're gonna be next year on the
Yes.
levy. So we definitely have more money this year, and then we would have to cut back next year. So that's where one of my,
Potentially, depending upon,
potentially,
yeah.
but if we're gonna spend more out of reserves now, we may need to spend that out of reserves next year more, since we'll be getting less next year in revenue aspects.
So what we have on special reserves this year are.
I'm talking
many
about
of them-
overall. I'm talking about general fund.
Sure,
everything.
but many of them are one-time projects that
Yes.
have been delayed for a while.
Of course.
And so we don't anticipate having the same level of cost next year either.
Correct, but as we all know, and as I've watched these meetings, I've been part of them for over a year now, we know things come up. We know that, unfortunately, the leak started to,
Some projects may not get done.
correct, and some things may get done, some things may be a lot less, some things may come in more than we're expecting. So, that we have to have that forward-looking vision that this library has lacked for a while now of, okay, we're here, we have money behind us, yes, we could spend it down, but when we're talking about a capital improvement plan, we're talking about a strategic plan, when we're talking about, probably renovating some areas like to increase maker space, which has, blown up over the last few years, those are gonna cost, that's gonna cost a lot of money.
Yes.
And at some point, we're not gonna have that additional money, so I'd rather, in my opinion, I'd rather pull back a little this year. Let's get that strategic plan in place. Let's get our capital improvement plan in place. Then next year we can sit down and we can know what we need to go through for the next 3 to 5 years. And that's actually how you function properly and know that things are gonna be
And
taken
I'm
care
gonna-
of.
Where we have more guidance.
I'm gonna jump onto Trustee Trumpo's point here and say that I think, from a number perspective, I think splitting the difference probably makes sense. So you're looking at 9.3-ish in revenues, give us a budget of 10.3. I think something like a budget of 9.8-ish or so, if that's going to be feasible for you. I think that would be, we're still spending down some because we have some extra, but we're saving the real spend down for once we got the strategic plan in place, so that we know that, the big spend down is gonna come out of this section to that section, versus spending down $1 million this year, without that big picture plan in place. We can do it. I mean, it's something the money is there. It's not the question of the money not being there. But if you think that coming down to that level, say at 9.8-ish, I'm just throwing out a number, right? But if you think coming down to that level is something that's feasible and is not gonna hamper anything, then that's what I would propose doing.
So to jump off that, the number that I actually came up with, looking at that it's gonna take a few months and possibly throughout the year to hire people, hire staff, materials needing to increase, but we don't have the staff to increase the materials and all of that. I'm sort of in the same range. I'm actually a little bit higher than Trustee Kadir. I'm at like the 9.85. That's where I think that we have a sweet spot between probably between 9.8, 9.85. If that's a budget we could work with, then that's great, because then next year when we do have less, potentially less, then we don't have to cut drastically. We could try to stay either flat or maintain the library. Again, when we have more strategic planning and everything in place, we can make these decisions better. Plus, as we've talked, as I've mentioned, there's a lot of things that you brought up when you came through your interview process that we wanted to do. Shelves with ADA and different compliances and things of that nature. So I want to make sure that we do that as well. But it's all part of that strategic plan. So I'd be okay at like a 9.85 is where I'd be really comfortable with.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Again, I was just throwing out a rough number where I kind of felt like, okay, we are spending down, like you said, but we're not spending down at the jeopardy of the ability to spend down once we have the strategic plan in place.
So your basic thoughts are spending about 500,000 out of reserve funds.
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, the bulk of it.
500,000 out of reserves?
Special reserves.
Not
No,
special reserve.
regular.
Over,
General,
so for the
General
net
fund.
deficit, the
You're
net
talking
deficit or
general
surplus over the entire budget,
So we went from like 11 to 14 in terms of our overall balance sheet. And of that 3 million increase, we spend down 500K.
Okay, my question is, whether you go to 9.8 or 9.85, how will it affect special reserves?
We would have to figure that out. I have to sit with all of the
Will their
department heads
numbers
again.
going down detract from special reserves?
So I have to sit down with the department heads and decide which things we would cut to get to the number that the board decides. So I do not know whether or not we will be cutting some of the requests from special reserves or some of the requests from the departments or some of the requests from staffing.
So
We have
we're
to
talking about
prioritize.
we're talking
about
special-
the overall
Okay.
budget, the entire budget.
I have a concern. There are items on this list for building and maintenance that have been on a list of, that should have been repaired for the past 2 years. The money was budgeted and they're still on the list, and I'm concerned, how much longer are we gonna postpone them? We've got retaining wall, we've got the parking lot we've been talking about, so,
Well,
and
that's
I'm
why
sure
The
there,
parking lot was not
and
part
I'm
of it
sure
last
there
year.
are, I'm sure there are many other items.
We pushed it off.
I know
Yeah,
there
yeah.
are, but what I'm saying is, it's like, we keep moving it from one year to the next. Should we at least can we just leave special reserves to maintain some of these repairs that can't wait any longer?
Like I said, I'll have a conversation with Rich about what needs to be prioritized. Part of the reason these things have been delayed is simply because he has not had support in the facility side of the job. And so he has been so busy, he has not been able to do every single project that's been budgeted for. That's true of many of the departments, just because, again, staffing levels.
But these are all outside projects.
They are, but it still takes time to get quotes, it takes time to plan, it takes time to get equipment, depends on what the project is.
Trustee, Executive
Okay.
Director Marshall, I'd also like to clarify something for the public. The parking lot project was not in the budget last year. It purposely got moved out so we could focus on the roof this year. So that was not part of that last year.
What I'm saying is it's a
I'm sorry, I wasn't done
problem.
speaking. So we actually did pull that $500,000 out of the budget last year and did move it to this year specifically so we could focus on the roof that was neglected for years by the prior board leadership.
The point I'm making is it's been
No, it wasn't.
in need and it was postponed, and I didn't want to see us continue to postpone.
Oh, sure, and
So,
I've been working very
thank
closely
you
with
so much.
Rich to prioritize things based on what we're scheduling. I have talked to all the department heads, and if we get the staffing levels to where we're requesting, we do think that these numbers and the projects that are being requested are feasible to be completed within this fiscal year without any unanticipated emergencies.
Well, and also, special reserves is not part of the budget, so I
Yes.
don't see why. It's not monies that we're asking the taxpayers to pay,
Right.
it's monies we already have.
Mhm.
So if you want to lower your budget for 24-25, I would like to see it not impact reserves, because we're talking about two different things here, two different funds of money.
Yes and no, because if we're tapping into the general reserve fund, which has grown not exponentially, but has grown dramatically, whether we pull that extra out of special reserve or whether we pull that extra out of the general fund, at the end of the day, isn't gonna make much of a difference because we have
So where would I?
a capital improvements project, which is gonna pull money out of special reserves later. And so in anticipation of that, whether that extra is pulled now from one line item or the other, it doesn't really impact the bottom line.
The only
Trustee
difference-
Kadir, my point is, special reserves is not the general fund.
Correct.
And
correct.
items in special reserves will always be paid out of special reserves. I'm asking that
Correct.
Rich's special reserve projects move forward since we have the money. And because it won't affect general fund either way.
Okay.
And it will cause some of these projects to just get worse in condition.
So in other words, if the director decides, hey, look, to knock 500K off the budget, I can knock 300 off regular and 200 off, special, you're saying, don't knock the 200 off special and only knock the 300 off general and leave it at that.
I'm saying the projects and special reserves have been postponed, the money's there.
So I think we're in
That's what
agreement.
I think that
and maybe
in
you
our
could
governance
rethink
to
what
let
you-
her do what her job is, if she needs to not, if she can decide where to knock the money off. If she wants to knock it off special reserves, then that's her decision.
Yeah, I would strongly recommend, that's the governance to run the day-to-day. This is
Not
what
only
the
that,
market-
but
I'm not
she
trying to tell you
needs
to
the
how to do your
staff,
job. I'm just trying to save the money.
like she says, in order to organize the stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Trustee, Treasurer Vitello, do you have any comments?
No, I'm ready to move on to the numbers, so we can get to the point for a vote.
Thank you.
I mean, not a vote, I'm sorry.
Good
Just
number.
wanna, yeah.
Okay, did you have a number in mind too, or no?
No.
Suzanne
Hold on.
has a
I'm
question
getting a
she's
question
asking.
from
I have a
trustee
question.
Yeah,
Shannon.
but she was in the middle of talking.
I'm so sorry. Under the special reserves, I
Yes.
just have a question.
Mhm.
For the new library signage,
Mhm.
where do we need the new library signage?
So the library signage would be throughout the building, because people have difficulty finding our lower
Yes.
level, people
Yes,
have
yes.
difficulty finding our elevator, people have difficulty finding our community, meeting room. So, and just for the sake of accessibility, having more clear signage right from when you walk into the building, what's on each level. We've started to improve that on a small level. We've added signs in the elevator that tell you what's on each floor, but we really need a professional to come in and redo all of our signage to show that the CMR is our tornado shelter, that type of thing, for accessibility reasons.
You almost need a director.
Yeah.
Can we hear numbers from other folks to see if we,
Yeah,
like your Burrows,
I mean,
Carolyn, Patty?
I came in here, and still feel that I would be happy with what Valerie put forth. I'm willing to support the full amount, just because I feel like over the last few years that we've been cut so hard, that bringing it back to where the director is comfortable, I would feel comfortable with that as well. I'm really happy about having all the positions in there and the strategic plan and the capital improvement plan, those are really important things. I really was hoping to have money put in there for Bookmobile, but I'm not gonna push that this year, I'm gonna wait.
That is one of the things I would like to include in our strategic plan.
Yeah.
And I will have the consultant ask the community if they're interested. We did go look at a Bookmobile at another library,
Mhm.
but we looked at Arlington Heights. They've had a Bookmobile, I believe, for 50 years, if I'm not mistaken. And they have really good patron attendance with that, but I didn't feel that it fit in with this year's budget because we would need to develop an entire new department.
Yeah.
And we're already doing that with security, so.
I was gonna say,
Yeah.
security is a priority
Yeah.
at this
So
point.
that is something that's like a wish list item.
It
though.
is.
So I mean,
Yes.
just
Yeah,
not,
maybe 3 to 5 years within that.
right, and the
Yeah.
strategic
timeframe.
plan is
Yeah.
exactly when we put that in,
I-
so.
Used a Bookmobile when I was a kid because of where I lived.
Mhm.
There was no library close.
Mhm.
So the
Well, in
only
Maine
way I had
Township-
use was a Bookmobile.
Mhm. Yep, Maine Township asked for more engagement from us, and that would be a great way to
Yes.
expand that, but we're
Yes.
gonna start slowly.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things I do wanna point out, again, just not to repeat myself, but these revenue estimates are conservative. You can see, for example, our year-to-date replacement taxes were 229,000. And we're only projecting 180,000 because those numbers are in flux, but they have been pretty high for the past several years for libraries. And same thing with our investment income, we're projecting 250,000. We're projected to get 423,000 by the end of this fiscal year.
Mhm.
And the interest rates may not remain the same, which is why we're projecting conservatively, but
Mhm.
if we only go 500,000 above our projected income and we get even more income that we're projecting, we will not spend any reserves down. So just that the board is aware of that with the final number that you give me to work within. If we're not trying to spend down reserves, that's fine, I just wanna know what the goal of the
Yeah, I
board
think-
is.
I don't think spending it on reserves for its own sake is a goal. I
Okay.
think spending on reserves, if we think that we need to spend on reserves.
Oh, everything I have in here, I do.
Oh, no,
believe is a
absolutely.
need,
I'm
Just to
not-
clarify
again-
that for the board.
Again,
yeah.
I'm just saying that, if we use the conservative number and we end up spending down 500, I'm like, okay, fine, we have the
Okay.
money there, right? If we end up not spending stuff down,
Mhm.
then we have more money when we get to that capital improvements plan that we
Okay.
can then, because to me, that's where the balance between the immediate short term and the long term lay. I mean, we want to be, there's not an unlimited pot. We aren't the U.S. government.
Absolutely.
And so, we want to make sure that 5 years from now, if that capital improvements plan says we got to spend $3 million on something,
Mhm.
that we're like, yeah, okay, it's there. But if we're like,
Yeah, but you know how long it's been since the library has had drastic improvements in this building? It's been
oh, I know, and
a
that's what
long time.
and that's what the capital improvements plan is for.
Exactly. Realistically, we have to start planning for the future, planning for that.
Right,
And therefore, we need to consider that with our reserves.
and that's exactly what I'm saying. That's
Yes.
exactly what I'm saying, that if
Yes.
we don't go way over, then
Yes.
we leave
And I
more
agree,
money.
I agree with that.
Well, and I just have
Right.
one question for Director Marshall. In a second.
Yes.
If we brought this budget down from the 10.3 to, let's say, 9.85, would we still be able to, and I know you have to go back and do the research and everything, but I can only assume there's some needs, wants, and wish list items in line by line, and I don't need to know the details of that. But would we still be able to at least address the needs and the wants? Maybe not every wish list item, but we would at least be able to, have what we need for the library, the wants of our staff to improve the library and get our programming going. At 9.85, would we be able to do that?
I believe so. I cannot guarantee that until I sit with everyone, so I can bring my final recommendation to the next board meeting, but I do believe that I can work comfortably within that number.
And I want to stress one point as well, the staffing positions, I think, should not be on the table. Like, those should all stay, if those are what you and the department heads have come up with, that should stay, because again, I'm in 100% agreement that having adequate staffing is what makes the library run, and so therefore, you shouldn't be like, hey, should I add this position or should I add that position? It should be more like, hey, and you know, if you ultimately conclude that 9.85 is not feasible and like you're gonna be cutting into things more than just a wish list item, then, you know, I wanna hear that.
I will bring it to you.
I'm just coming up with a number based on the anticipated revenues, which of course are conservative, anticipated budget, the shortfall,
Yeah.
I'm looking at it from that macro perspective. I'm not looking at it deliberately, because again, it's your job, not mine, to look at it from the perspective of, hey, what do I need, what do I want, what I can do without.
Well, and I'm looking at it from a little different perspective. I'm looking at a perspective like we talked with Cassandra, we're not gonna hire 16 positions all at once. So we're gonna save some money in cost there. You know, we're not gonna get all the materials that are in there. It's probably gonna be, instead of, I think this is at 11.7%. So maybe it's at 10%, so we may save 2% there. So I think by pulling those little pieces out, that's how I got to the number of really about 500,000. Because by the time you start pulling some of that stuff out, yes, again, conservative, which is awesome. I'd rather be conservative than extreme. But I think that's where we come up with the 500,000 of, and then again, we have to be, the one thing, and I'm not trying to beat anybody up that was on prior boards, so please don't take it that way. But the one thing is that this board has not had a forward-looking 3 to 5 year plan, except when I brought it up during the last year's budget process for years. And we need to get to.
Which is true.
We need to get to that. And until we get to that, I'd rather be more conservative in the budget even a little.
I agree, because that 3 to 5 year plan, like Patty pointed out, we haven't done capital improvements in a while.
Big time, no.
And we're gonna need to spend down a lot of money, and we're gonna need to tap into that savings, into that general fund, very significantly.
Even 5, 6 years ago, I don't remember, it might have been 6 years ago. I was on a committee where we talked about building improvements and things like that. And we had a wish list, but realistically,
I'm gonna fight on that too.
the only thing that's ever,
Maybe I
to
will.
my knowledge, been addressed was like the outside sign and a few minor things. None of the big stuff. We were thinking of the future, but unless we have somebody actually sit down and give us stuff, that's the best way.
Well, if I may, Director Marshall, I just want to just voice my opinion so that it's on the record for everyone. Number one, I agree with the number that you proposed. I believe it's a number where you could adequately supervise our services here. In my perspective, the library here has, if you will, we've been under market, meaning that our services were under market, our employees were paid under market. And so with the work that we've done so far, I see us as bringing up to market standards. And I saw that through those surveys that we did, the Rails information that you brought to us. And I take value in that. So I applaud you for the work that you've done on this. And I do hope that we reach a consensus that you will be able to function at market value. I believe that's going to bring great asset to our community. Certainly, I would like for our library to continue to be a cornerstone of our great district here. I see that a lot of people would benefit from that. And so with that being said, all in all, I'm in support of your numbers and looking forward to those final details.
Thank you.
How do you want to fire away?
To begin with, I was in favor of the numbers also. Especially you're saying you weren't going more conservative versus aggressive, so I have no problem with the numbers.
Sounds good.
I think, Valerie Marshall, I think we should be more conservative in reference to our numbers. And I'm really kind of concerned just about hiring without any further information. I'm really kind of concerned about that because there's no statistics regarding what you're actually requesting. I mean, I think it's rather hard to justify those numbers, but I would go conservative more than anything.
Do you have a proposal in terms of an actual number?
I would do 9.5.
Okay.
Actually, I would prefer to have the, worksheets for the budget line items so I can really understand what we're talking about. I can't say I can just pull a number out of the hat. I'm looking at last year's budget compared to this year's proposed budget, and I don't see the statistics to explain the benefit. So I have a hard time with it. I know it's great to increase things, but because I'm aware of some situations that need closer scrutiny or maybe some changes, I'm just concerned about the direction we're going in. I realize our director is definitely doing what this board expects her to do. All right, I just look at the budget differently. I'm uncomfortable with just pulling out a number when I'm unable to even use any data, at least the data from the worksheets, to say, well, this looks appropriate based on what you're considering. It's too much of a shell for me. So I'm sure I'll get the information I need from all your conversations when you determine whatever the amount that is agreeable.
So
That's what we need to do tonight, is agree on a number.
So I'm comfortable going up to Jason's number in 9.85. Are you folks comfortable with again, not a final verdict, not a Valerie, you have to come down to this number, but just a recommendation that if you can make it work within this number, and if you think that that's not gonna hurt anything, that definitely not hurt any needs, definitely not put off, needed improvements, if all it knocks off is a wish list, are you guys comfortable with that?
Well, but is this really including the wish list, or is this just including the wants and the needs?
Well, that's what she has to go back and figure out.
Well, no, that's what I'm
Yes,
asking for
right.
This
clarification.
entire budget includes everything that the department heads requested and think is feasible within this fiscal year.
So that includes the wish list then.
That does include
Yeah.
some wish list items.
So if she determines that 9.85 is feasible, are the three
Well,
of you
I'm sure that
comfortable
whatever
with
number
it?
we tell her, she will make work,
She
right?
will make it work.
Well,
The problem I see
Exactly.
is, as far as wish lists, they were thrown out of the window for quite a few years. They were
Yeah.
totally thrown out the window. When a person comes to the board and says, I think the budget needs to be cut 38%, excuse me, that tells you things were just thrown out the window.
Patty, can I ask you a question? If let's say we all go up to this 10.37, okay? But now next year, we're not gonna get as much in the recouping of the tax levy, okay? We don't know what if we're gonna increase the tax levy again. Hold on one second, let me.
I'm
finish this,
listening
okay?
to you.
So we don't know if we're gonna increase the tax levy again. There's multiple trustees on record saying that they're not going to increase the tax levy this year. So with all that being done, that means any wish list items, any wants, any capital improvements, if we continue to go over, we may actually shortcome ourselves next year. When we're looking at these positions that are gonna be added, there's a couple of $100,000 there alone to play with, that we're not gonna fill all these positions within the first 6 months of having this. So if we tighten ourselves a little bit this year, and I want the staff to have what they need and what they want, but as we're doing this, unfortunately, it's a lot easier to break something down than it is to build something back up. So ripping the library down and ripping positions down and ripping services down was very easy to do when you make cuts and slapping hiring freezes and things like that, versus we have to get people hired, we have to get things going, we have to move programming around, we have to do all that. I'd rather be a little tighter this year, so that way next year when we take in less revenue, we could still give the staff what they need next year and even more next year, plus the capital improvement.
So basically what you're saying is cut the levy.
No, I'm not saying cut the levy at all. We're gonna get less because we just recouped from the levy. So automatically, we're gonna get less
Okay,
next year.
okay,
So so my thought process is if we're at 9.85 and we potentially, let's say, have to go back to 9.7 next year because the tax levy is not gonna be as much, it's easy to come off about 1.5 million than it is come off of 650,000. I'm sorry, 150,000. No,
650.
versus $650,000 next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If we get people accustomed to a 10.3 budget, and now next year with the price, the increase of goods and everything else, it needs to be 10.5, but we can only spend 9.5, now we're $1 million short.
Well, what I'm gonna ask Valerie to play off Jason's point is gonna be, can you identify, how much of this is, how much of the budget is recurring versus how much is one time? Because if the one times are gonna be spent, whether they're gonna be spent next year or this year, I'd rather spend them this year and get them out of the way. So
that goes into the line item.
Right,
budget.
I'm asking you to make that determination, but when you come back to us and say, hey, I made the determination that 600,000 of this budget is stuff that's happening once and it's going away. So if you were to chop down 600,000 next year, there's gonna be no change because the one time it's as if there is no change.
So
That makes me a lot more comfortable at 10.3, than if you're telling me that, oh yeah, only 100,000 is.
a lot of the special reserve projects
Yeah.
are one-time projects. If
Okay.
you look at our actual operating budget, that's why I
Yeah,
separated
the
the
7.8,
two.
right?
The 7.9 versus what's budgeted this year is 6.4. That's not a huge difference in the operating budget itself, and the majority of the operating budget is recurring expenses.
Right,
But-
okay.
But we're on the general, we are looking again at those positions being filled, which you're
Right.
probably looking at least $200,000 to $300,000 in savings there over
Yeah.
the course of the year. Library materials, because we don't have the staff in place, and we don't have even full places to put all the materials that we need at this point.
Yeah,
You're probably looking at 2 to 3% there, so that's another $150,000 there potentially. $120,000 there. So you're looking right there between 3 to 400,000.
yeah, I guess then the question is, are we budgeting what our theoretical maximum is, or are we budgeting what we think it's actually gonna end up being? And that's now a budget philosophy question. And so it's almost as if you bring it down a few hundred thousand just by playing with the math.
Correct.
Whereas you're not actually changing any of the items per se, other than you're saying that, hey, these 6 positions, I'm not gonna talk to Cassandra, and Cassandra says, yeah, I'm gonna fill these first ones first. You say, okay, fine, these 6, I'm only gonna budget a 6-month for
Correct.
them
And
as
that's-
opposed
and
to
that's
a
how-
year. And if
That's how
that,
I got it.
so that, if that's what Jason is doing, then it doesn't actually change anything you're actually doing for the library. Like, that's what,
It may or may not, I would have to
Right.
go through the numbers,
Seriously, the
but
one thing I foresee
yeah,
from what I've been hearing is it may delay us going to the hours that she says our patrons have been
yeah,
asking.
that I don't wanna do. I would like to see those hours.
So
resumed.
therefore, we may have to increase the hiring a little faster than what you or
Right, but
Jason are saying.
Cassandra, like my whole makerspace joke came up, Cassandra only has a certain amount of bandwidth to hire a certain amount of
Yeah,
people.
we haven't
Sure.
had one position hired and it's 4 weeks, but not, again, you guys have done what you're supposed to, and it's probably gonna be 6 or 7 weeks till we get one
Right.
position hired.
And our priority is, again,
Yeah,
security.
yeah, go. So I mean, thinking about the staffing part of it, what you said in the beginning, 70% of the budget is what we're spending on staff and their benefits, right? So that only leaves 30% of this budget is for what the staff is asking for on top of themselves, so.
the majority of
But
the
that's
requests
what
are
happens
for
when you
additional staff.
increases the way they got.
The-
Right, no, I'm not saying it's the wrong, I'm just saying that that's another way to look at it. If 70% of the budget is staff, then only 30% of the budget is the capital improvements or
That's
the
not,
materials
that's
or,
not correct.
that's your opinion.
Okay.
So that's just something to keep in your mind, like, all of this budget is a lot of money, but most of it is not
Most of
stuff
it's
that the
staff.
staff is asking for.
Well, and that's what, when we were elected in this last election, we wanted to make sure everybody had a living wage, and I'm all for
Right.
that. But that is exactly what happens. As salaries increase, your budget
Right.
decreases for other things. So that's normal in any business. It's happened in my personal business.
I don't know if I feel like, I understand what you're saying about if we go down a little bit more this year, then it wouldn't be as hard next year if we have to go down, I understand that, but I kind of feel like if we don't do it this year, we might not be able to do it later either, so I'm kind of wary of that, so
My
I don't
concern
have to
is,
stick with the number of the
Can we
10.3,
go-
but maybe can we go somewhere in the
would you be
middle?
willing to go in between?
Maybe
The- the
9.9?
one-
If you don't mind, can we
I-
ask the director
well,
some questions at this end, because getting late?
No, we can all wait to hear each other, just like we did for
I
you.
would absolutely be okay going to 9.9. I mean, I was at 9.85, it's $50,000 more. If 9.9 gets a deal done with everybody, then I would be more than okay with that.
What did the two of you feel?
I feel all right with that, but
Well, I had mentioned that I support the numbers that Valerie gave. I think that there were several things here with regards to revenue. I think the numbers in terms of taxes are, I'm very hopeful that that'll be the true investments in terms of that. I've been working closely with that, and fortunately, interest rates have come up, so we have a little bit more than projected. It's difficult to say what's going to happen in the future, right? But that in itself, the revenue part, is what gives me hope that we should be able to work well with the numbers that Valerie gave us, the 10.3. So, I don't want to step down from the 10.3.
trustee Derblick, go ahead.
Go ahead, Karen.
I was gonna mention that some of the line items are not, President Keene mentioned that it's 30% is capital items, is that the term you use?
No, I said that 70% is staff and benefits and the other 30% is not.
No, but you.
I said, for example, capital improvements.
Capital, okay, but there are items in that 30% that are associated with staff and cannot be decreased. It's just what they are, based on our union and things we give our staff. So it is less than 30% if you're trying to find a portion that she can play with.
So it's probably 25.
I'm sorry?
I said it's probably 25%. You're right. I think you're correct, like the professional
No,
development stuff.
actually, it may be, I'm not gonna, argue with you, but, I'm just saying it's not that cut and dry. So I don't know how much you're looking for her to cut, but, or where she can take it from, so she's really gonna have her work cut out to figure it out.
Well, I think, like we've said a few times, knowing that you're not gonna have all the staff in place on July 1st, knowing that materials isn't gonna be all bought on July 1st, and we're gonna need to space it out. I think coming down at 300-400, my number for that was between 350 and 450,000. So if we're gonna say we'll go down to 9.9 million and we could all agree to that number, then I'm more than okay with that.
Trustee Schoenfeld, you said you had
May
a
I
question?
please ask you two questions? In terms of your budget,
Mhm.
could we cut maybe some of the trustee expense?
So I did include in there a much higher trustee expense in anticipation of potentially having 3 or 4 trainings over the next fiscal year for trustees that have been costing an average of $3,000 per training. That is up to the trustees whether or not you want me to continue to include that.
I still think we need training. It was proven again today.
Yeah, and there will be a new board in May.
And then also furniture and fixtures.
Mhm.
That's a large allocation for that.
It is. We have a lot of shelving that we want to replace in terms of accessibility, as well as we're trying to expand the world languages collection. We're trying to get shelving that can be moved out of the way so that we can have more shelving right outside of the boardroom, but that can also be moved so that we can have receptions and things of that nature for the gallery. So that's a lot of what is being requested for the furniture and fixtures, as well as there are just some shelving units and tables and chairs that are in need of repair or replacement that have been around for a long time.
And I'll bring one up that I'm sorry, Sue, are you done? I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, I'll.
No, one that I would love to see decrease over time too, and I mean, I know it's up $40,000 in budget is the legal fees. I mean, again, this year, I think we're at 120 or 130,000 in legal fees. I mean, if we could bring it down to a realistic number where we didn't have to have Dennis come here for meetings constantly and things of that nature, I mean, we could probably hire more staff just based on that alone, so.
I'd prefer not to take that out of the
No,
budget.
I'm not, I just wish that we
yeah.
could, like, we go.
Well, if we can work on
I think
bringing
we will.
that number down, that's great.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like I said, I'm comfortable with Patty's suggestion of meeting at 9.9, I'd be more than comfortable with that.
I missed the discussion behind it, but I'm fine with that.
I mean, I would still be happy to stick with
So
the
would
top
I,
amount, but I don't
I'm-
think that we would have enough agreement in that area.
No,
I don't think that, unless Carolyn or Sue, you're gonna agree to the full amount?
No, I don't believe in the full amount.
Okay,
No.
so then we're at 9.9.
Yeah,
If there are at least 4 of us that are in agreement for
If
that.
Right now, there's 5. No,
There's four.
No, there's 4.
Yeah, Roberto's,
Who's the-
Roberto wants the
Roberto
full
wants the
amount,
full.
Okay.
and I
Yeah.
would too, but, you know, there's only 2 of
yeah,
us,
I
so.
would like
three
it,
of
but
us.
realistically, with 3 to 4, it won't pass.
So let's go with 9.9.
9.9.
I'll-
Try to get to 9.9.
Yeah.
Well, I just want to just restate my point. I would like for Valerie to have all the tools that are necessary to be able to fulfill her mission, fulfill the mission of the library. And not that 9.9 will not do it, but I know that she's been working extremely hard, trying to bring things up to par. And so if that small difference is what it's gonna take to get her to where she needs to be, I'm okay then with the 9.9.
What I heard from you, Valerie, if I heard correctly, before, you know, I missed that where Patty suggested 9.9, is that if you have a number of 9.9, you believe at this time that you can make that work and do everything you have to do.
I do think so, and if that changes, I'll bring that to the
Yeah,
board and my
and-
reasons why.
And that's what I wanna
As long
hear.
as you,
Like, if you come and tell us, say, hey, like, 9.9 is not really gonna work, but I can do 10.1, I wanna hear that. I don't wanna just be like, we are giving you a directive of this exact number. That's not, that wasn't the purpose, my purpose in proposing the number. My purpose in proposing the number was to be mindful of what's coming up within the next 2-3 years, and to try to make sure that we have money to do all that stuff too.
So worst case scenario, we were conservative, our accounts grow a little bit, and we have more for the capital improvement plan, we have for the strategic plan. Because the one thing that Trustee Patello even said was, we have no idea what the interest rates are gonna be. We have
Exactly.
a major presidential election coming up in November,
and
that
that
could destroy,
Totally
could go
change
one way or the
everything.
other, and things could change drastically. We could be back to interest rates of 2%, and now we're not getting as much money. We could be at interest rates of 10%, and we're getting more. We have no idea. So I think there's just a little bit too much uncertainty, and too much uncertainty within our own strategic plan and the capital improvement plan. Otherwise, I mean, I was fully in support of that, but knowing what's coming and knowing what I did last year and projecting that out, I want to make sure we're okay. I really do.
that's partly because of the presidential election coming up and the unknown
Yeah.
factor, that I would say not 9.8, but 9.9. Because at least it gets us a little closer to what she asked for.
We're not even sure if we're gonna have a republic next year.
We don't know what we're gonna have next year.
So,
So what will happen then next,
What
Valerie,
we're
is-
gonna have is an old president.
we know that.
Yeah. Or I guess I'm gonna ask what I'm thinking, right, will happen next is we've made a decision now on a number for you tonight. And then our next meeting is gonna be our board meeting in July, when we will be voting on the final budget. So between now and then, I'm gonna suggest if anyone wants to have a private meeting with you, to ask more questions individually, being respectful of the authority that you have and able to make the decisions on those things, then that would be the opportunity for any of us to have questions answered between now and then, so that when we get to the meeting, it's time to vote and not time to belabor a million questions
I
again.
just want direction from the board. Should I be going line by line with anyone?
No,
Not me,
Not me.
you should not.
no, so I guess that's what you're asking, right, at the board to give you a directive, is
Yes.
that, do you need to do that?
Yes.
No,
I'm saying no?
No.
do you need us to
So,
vote
But,
on that?
but if
We
you
can't
want,
vote because
Can't
it's
vote.
not on.
if you
Just
want to give more detail, I don't
Mhm.
have a problem with that. If you feel that that's
Yeah.
appropriate with a discussion with an individual trustee, I don't have any problem with that, just as long as it's not a burden on you. That's the only question. If you have the numbers already and trustee asks for them, then
And if it
I don't-
becomes, if
The
it becomes
numbers-
intrusive of your job versus our governance,
Mhm.
then I would say turn that request down.
I
The,
would
the
feel
numbers
comfortable
that
with
we
that as
have are in draft form because I was not given direction as far as a number to work within, so everything's gonna be changing right now
Yeah,
because we have to
that's-
talk about.
so,
That's fine.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, go ahead.
That's fine, we have to talk about getting numbers in different places now.
Yeah, so when you try to do this 9.9 number,
Mhm.
if you feel that the 9.9 number doesn't work,
Mhm.
what I would like to see then, if you generally feel it doesn't work, then obviously genuinely, sorry, if you feel that it doesn't work, then I'd like to see, again, just so we have to make efficient the voting process, say, hey, this is what I would do to get to 9.9, but I don't think that's a good idea, so here's the number I'd actually like to be at. And if then that's an easy vote, like, do we keep these two items or not, right? It's not a hard, it's not a long
So the
discussion.
question becomes, do we want to do that during the July 17th meeting, or would we want to have a special meeting before that to iron that out?
I don't think it'd be difficult to iron out, because we will hear from
But
her.
if she needs to make changes to the budget, we have to present the budget
Yeah,
publicly
she
to
knows.
vote on July
Yeah.
17th.
We would
Right.
have to have a special meeting, I think.
We would have to have a
because
special meeting.
But,
We would
but,
have to,
so that special meeting only has to occur if
right,
she thinks the 9.9 is not gonna work for some
Correct.
reason, which we will find out once you go through those numbers in the next
Right.
couple of weeks. So we don't have to announce a special meeting now, we can
we
just,
probably won't have to, but
right,
if that was the situation, then I would think that would work better.
okay, yeah,
than-
fair.
Yeah, then doing it
I
that
have
night.
a question. If for some reason she's having difficulty, why do we need a special board meeting? You're not taking a vote right now anyway.
Because we're giving her direction tonight to get
Because
to
we
that
wanna
number. And
have
if
a
she
final
can't
vote
get
on
to
the
that
17th,
number,
yeah.
then it's better to know ahead of time before the meeting so that we can discuss it and find out why.
Right, and I agree, but what I'm saying is we're not taking a vote tonight to tell her 9.9.
Yeah, right.
So if she has difficulty, instead of calling a special board meeting, can't you just email the board and then the
Get a
majority could
consensus?
just say, go up?
Yeah, I think so.
mean, why a special
Well,
board
we
meeting?
can do that, I suppose, but that's what you've been arguing against for the last couple of months.
Say
Yeah,
you-
no, I
You're
think
not
we can do that.
voting,
Yeah, I
you're
think-
not
do you mean
voting.
have her get a
President
consensus,
Keane,
basically?
President Keane, you still did not vote tonight.
Correct,
You took a consensus.
yes.
Correct.
So are you saying that you'll take a consensus now, but we should have a special board meeting and vote next?
I think Carolyn's got a point here, that we should,
I don't know.
if, we don't need a special meeting, if she says, hey, that 9.9 is not gonna work, I need 10.1. Hey, hang on, let me finish. I need 10.1, then Valerie can simply message members of the board, and if a consensus of the board says, yeah, go ahead, then that's it, we're done.
Hold on.
But I have
You
to
don't need a
take
meeting
that back,
discussing
I
it.
have to take that back, because you're right. Dennis told me you don't take a consensus, you vote at the board meeting. So
True.
actually, what we're doing now is wrong. Me recommending we do it wrong again, I withdraw that suggestion, so, at least coming from me.
When we're talking about budgets and stuff, that's something I would defer to Valerie to find out for us. If we
Yes.
have to have we may have to have a public meeting versus a public email.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Because this is
That's
taxpayer
fine,
dollars, so.
that's fine,
Yes.
that's fine. Yeah.
Let's first see what happens if we even need to have it. It sounds like Valerie's
And
very
we have
comfortable
to
getting us to the
discuss.
9.9. So if she's very comfortable doing that, I have a feeling that she'll be able to get to the 9.9, and we'll go from there.
we're gonna have to have a public meeting anyway,
Right,
and then it has to be, does it get posted in the paper prior to the public meeting?
yes.
Yes.
So, and that all has to be done by a
30 days,
specific date, so
In September.
that's, yeah.
Mhm.
So that's all stuff, and I think, what is it, 30 days after we,
Yep.
is when it's,
Um,
by September, whatever the date is.
Hopefully, we're coming close to the end of this meeting. I did want to disclose, for sake of transparency, Valerie and I will be meeting this Wednesday, and this are for a meeting regarding our investments and options for investments. So we're going to be meeting with our financial advisor on that. So anytime I have a meeting with Valerie, the majority are in reference to treasurer duties. And understand, and I want to be, again, fully disclosure here, I will not interject myself in the budgeting process. That's her responsibility. Wait for the time when we get to vote. But do understand that Valerie and I, we're going to be building a relationship with our investment advisors and the other individual.
Jamie Racklin from
Jamie Racklin.
Maristem.
Right, in terms of how we can better position our cash balances at this point to put us in a much more favorable position. So I want to make sure that everyone understands that, so that if you happen to come and see me at the library here, you'll understand why.
Thank you.
Please feel free to approach me if you have any questions with regards to any communication that I have with anyone here.
Could you share like their suggestions? You just mentioned Mayor Stem would provide suggestions on the best way for our cash. I'd like to know what.
Sure. Well, some of the
Suggestions they
things, some of the
might
things that
recommend.
have been discussed, were discussed in that training that was here, which I happened to review that training after the fact because I was on vacation, simply was just looking at what type of available funds are there now, and cash is one of that. And then how long and what amounts are we going to sit on in terms of cash, and how do we make best use of it?
Oh, you're talking about investments.
Investments.
Okay,
only,
So-
I see what you're
yes.
saying.
To be
Alright.
clear, we're not meeting with Meristem next week. We're meeting with one of our advisors from the bank who manages our
Sure.
investments through the bank. Meristem does offer consulting services for investments, but that's not what our contract is currently with them. Currently, they're working on the budget with us. We may in the future recommend to the board to look into potentially extending that contract, which would be above my authority to extend, because we may want their advice on the levy or investments or other services that they provide, but we're not there with Meristem at this point. We're meeting with representatives from our bank.
Right. And just to close on that, I just want to say that we have been fortunate, and as Jason mentioned earlier, you know, it's very difficult to predict interest rates, but we have been very fortunate right now. I've done my responsibility of looking at some of the options, and some of the decisions that we made so far have been favorable. And, you know, I'll keep my fingers crossed and I'll keep looking at those numbers to make sure that we take the best advantage of these times. Because again, if we can better position some of that money, whether it's short-term or long-term investments, we should be doing that and keeping a very close eye on that. Things change quite rapidly.
Roberto, I have some side questions for you. I'm not gonna bug it, but I'm just curious as to why we don't invest in things like S&P indices and things of that nature, which are, you know, overall, over a long term, have higher yields.
So
I'll discuss with you privately,
Okay.
because you can explain that to me.
Great.
But I don't think it needs to be, I just want to bring that up, that there are other options other than just sticking in the bank.
Right.
Are we ready for other?
Before we move on, just to be clear, so the board has decided that Valerie will not provide me with any of the budget worksheets, correct?
I don't think we decided that.
We are
I think we decided
agreed
that,
on,
I think we decided that she's gonna use her discretion, and if it's not a burden, then she'll provide you what you ask for.
Okay, there are like
It's not
80 budget line items. I'm thinking,
She may have numbers for all of them, who knows?
I'm sure
not
she
asking.
does, but talking about a burden, I don't know.
well, that would be like an extremely lengthy appointment that,
Oh, no, I
means she
wouldn't want to
can't do her
discuss
other work.
them. I just want a copy of them. I wouldn't.
It's a
So-
working document that's still live, so there's no final document. So as Valerie explained in her email, it's not even foilable at this point because it's a working document, so.
What's
for
a
her-
draft document? Which at least give me something to start with. We're only going
well, I
up a
think that
couple.
maybe the rule should be that we all get the same thing, so if what we're getting is not sufficient for you, then I'm not sure what it is that you would need.
The worksheets.
I don't have an issue, if Valerie wants to provide those worksheets, I'm not saying don't. It's just, I just leave it.
I
to-
could-
No,
I
but
could
she's
of course
asking
warn
us for
about
that
names.
direction, so
Yeah.
that she's not in that sticky situation.
Yeah, we,
Okay.
I don't think there's any, you're crossing the line of governance to the day-to-day operations.
Fair, I'll stay out of it.
I know, but in terms of governance, as far as authority and transparency, I mean, we're kind of like muddying those waters as well. I mean, that's my responsibility as a trustee. So if I want to better understand what is on the table for Rich and what might not be working this year, at least I can see that.
I think that that's just a difference of opinion.
So you're denying me the worksheets. That's all I need to hear, okay? I just need a
Well,
conclusion.
those are your words.
Pardon me?
So those are your words.
Well then, I'm just gonna rethink, would you provide them to me or not?
You will receive the same documents that all trustees receive. We're all gonna get the same thing.
Okay, right, so can I request from Valerie a copy of the
You
worksheet?
can request anything you want.
No, I'm asking, will she provide them? What is you're gonna have the final
Carolyn, we're all
say.
getting the same documents, which is gonna be very similar to what we received tonight. That's what we're getting.
Okay, so you are not allowing her to give me the worksheets?
I personally am one of 7 people, out of whom 5 are agreeing that we don't need those documents.
Okay, so the 5 of you are deciding that I can't get them. All right, it's fine, it's all I needed. I'm glad we got that figured out.
We move on to other?
Sure.
Okay, other, anyone, any other?
Yes, I do. I didn't from the beginning of the night, but I will say it real quick. 3 times this evening, there's been accusations against multiple elected officials sitting at this table, which I consider extremely damning and extremely attackative by a fellow trustee. I'm tired of hearing the side conversations. I'm tired of hearing things that people don't know about, and I'm tired of being attacked. I've asked this publicly as a public comment. I've asked this privately. Can we please all stop the personal attacks against each other, and can we please work together? But there were 3 personal attacks tonight against trustees, making accusations against elected officials that there are things going on that are not. So if you're gonna come with that, and you're gonna make those accusations, then please make sure you have some sort of documentation or you have some sort of proof, because it's getting to the point where it's really, really close to having to get legal things involved for accusations and defamation of character of elected officials. Thank you.
Does anyone else have other?
I move to close the meeting.
I second.
Roberta, afterwards, do you have a minute?
Trustee Kadir?
Yes.
Trustee Drblick?
Yes.
Trustee Shulko? Treasurer Patello?
Yes.
Secretary Rosansky?
Yes.
Vice President Trunko?
Yes.
President King?
Yes, 8:47.
Thank you.
I'm gonna get some water.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, I need to.